recorded and will be posted for public consumption online at boston.gov. And with that, I am sharing on the screen some helpful notes if you haven't used WebEx before. So feel free to read through this as I run through an introduction, and then we will go from there. So I just want to do a quick introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Fandel. I'm the mayor's liaison to Dorchester. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm here tonight to facilitate the statutory required cannabis community outreach meeting. This is an application by Gabe Vieira of Zip Run for a courier model cannabis delivery license to be operated at the address of 1170 Morrissey Boulevard, Boston, Massachusetts, 02125. Before we start tonight, I do just want to run through some of my expectations for this meeting. Having participated in multiple meetings of this kind, I know it can be a sensitive topic dealing with cannabis. I just want to make it clear that no decisions are being made tonight, and at no time will it be acceptable to be disrespectful to anyone during this meeting. That includes myself, the applicant, or other neighbors on this call who you might have disagreements with. We're all entitled to our opinion, no right or wrong opinion, so to speak. We're here tonight to collect as many comments as we can and answer as many questions as we can. I ask that all questions be directed toward the applicant and myself only. The applicant will answer all questions related to this proposal as best as they can, and I will answer any questions specific to the city's process, or Leslie can answer any questions about the Cannabis Board. If I'm unable to answer a question, I'm happy to get you more information. I know there may be some aspects of this that might need some follow-up, and I'm happy to do so. I'd like to note that this is an open comment period, and that if you'd like to get a question answered after this call, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself or the Cannabis Board to have anything clarified. My contact information is on the flyer that you received. I'll also put it in the chat periodically throughout this meeting. Insofar as the presentation, there'll be no questions during the presentation. Following the presentation, there'll be a period of comments and questions and concerns, and I'll just facilitate that portion and also address how you can participate in that. I know there's some folks dialing in by their phone and is also on the computer. I do want to note that this is not a conversation on the legality of marijuana. I know it was a debate that occurred between many in the city, but it was overwhelmingly supported in the city of Boston to be legalized and moved forward with this process. So we won't be debating the merits of cannabis use. We're just going to be discussing about the zoning and merits of this application. With that, I just want to thank everyone for attending this meeting tonight, and I'm going to turn it over briefly to Leslie, and then I will jump back in to turn it over to Gabe.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for having me. My name is Leslie Delaney-Hawkins. I'm the Executive Secretary to the Cannabis Board in Boston, and what that means is I am the attorney and the staff support to the board. I want to start this off by saying I do not usually attend these meetings. Obviously, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services does a phenomenal job of running the community process, but because this is the first time we're seeing this license type, I thought it was important for me to come to answer any questions folks had about this license type, but also to make very clear what this is and what it is not. And I want to start by saying thank you to Gabe Vieira, the applicant, who has been incredibly patient with the Cannabis Board as we have gotten up and running with this new license type and figured out what this looks like and what it doesn't look like. So this, as Pat Fandel stated, this is the beginning of the conversation. The Boston Cannabis Board considers, among other things, community input, and the record will remain open even past when we eventually have a community meeting, which is not, or I'm sorry, when we have a hearing before the board, which has not currently yet been scheduled because Gabe and the Zip Run team have not finished the community process. I think it's very important to note this is an application for a courier model delivery. And what that means is the address in the neighborhood in Dorchester is where the business operations take place, where the vehicles are stored, and where dispatch occurs from. At no time, and this is not just laws under the city of Boston, this is state law, this is federal law, at no time will cannabis be stored at this facility. So there will never be a recreational use where people are coming and purchasing from this facility. There will never be a storage use. This is simply the Uber Eats, if you will, of cannabis. We understand this is the first one that we're actually seeing go through the process in the city of Boston, but to provide a little bit of background on why this use was created at the state level, for the next 3 years, courier model and wholesale model on delivery are only allowed applicants who are social equity or economic empowerment at the state level. And that is to provide, based on the war on drugs and the disproportionately impacted areas, that is to allow those individuals who fall into certain categories under the state's regulations and the city's regulations as equity applicants, the ability to enter into this market in a different way. Establishing a recreational site takes a significant amount of capital. There's obviously a lot of neighborhood input, a lot of input from the municipality. This license type was created very specifically to allow for additional access. Gabe Vieira is a certified equity applicant pursuant to the ordinance that establishes the board that I work for and that regulates cannabis in the city of Boston. So I just want to make it very clear that, again, there will be no cannabis stored at any time at this site. Should the future model be adopted at this, it has been adopted at the state level, should it be adopted at the city level, it would be a completely new process. You cannot just convert a license type from courier to wholesale, which would allow for the storage of product. So I just think it's very important for us to be very clear about what this is. This is, again, I'm oversimplifying it, this is the Uber Eats of cannabis. What Zipron would be allowed to do from this facility, if approved and granted a license by the Boston Cannabis Board and the Cannabis Control Commission at the state level, is they could dispatch from this location, they could pick up from dispensaries, either in the city or outside of the city, and they could deliver to individuals. And that is all regulated by the state. So there will be significant regulations placed on the vehicles used, the recordings used, the way money is exchanged. And again, Gabe and his team will be able to speak to this better than I can, but I cannot emphasize enough that this is not a retail use. And that the way the board and the city in reviewing this, just from a review level, not from a community input level, but the way we view this is just like any other delivery use. In actuality, it's even more highly regulated than other delivery uses. So thank you all for having me. Thank you for letting me to provide a little bit of background, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Cool. Thank you, Leslie, for that. I'm going to turn it over to Gabe now to run through his presentation. Before I get started, I did just want to give a couple of shout outs to some folks in the crowd. I see that representatives from Councillor Flaherty's office, Councillor Baker's office, and Rep Beal's office. I don't know if you're Tom, you're here on your own or as a part of the representative, but in either case, Tom Mannion from the representative office is here, as well as Karen Foley from Councillor Nisa Sabi George's office. So with that, I did just want to turn it over to Gabe, and then I will jump back in a bit.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you all for joining the call today. I truly appreciate it. I have my colleague Ellis, who is the Chief Growth Officer, on the call with me as well. I am the CEO of Zipron, and I just want to say thank you for joining the call. To double back on Leslie and Patrick's points, no, we will not be storing cannabis in our facility. We also won't be accepting cash as a measure of transaction, nor will we be accepting in-person debit card transactions. The only transactions that we will be accepting is debit transactions via online payment, to even further the security measures that the state put in place, as well as the CCC, which is the Cannabis Control Commission. So I just wanted to make that clear from the beginning of the presentation, so there isn't much confusion at all, and I will obviously get back to that point later in the presentation. But to start it off, ZipRun is essentially a one-stop e-commerce platform for both delivery and pickup. And when I mean pickup, I don't refer to at the location, but pickup at the dispensary's location. So we on our e-commerce platform, we have an option for pickup, which is where we partner with dispensary partners. We pick up cannabis at their product and we deliver it to their end consumers. And then for pickup, it's just the process of end consumers placing an order on our website, picking it up at the dispensary's location and not ours. So now I'm going to go on to the team slide. So it's myself. I'm the CEO of ZipRun. To give you some background story on myself, I grew up in Boston. I went to St. Anne's, now St. Paul II. And then I also graduated from UMass Amherst Eisenberg School of Management. And then I also went on to work at Ernst & Young as a management consultant, which is a big four. And then Christian Nicholson, who was our chief operating officer, he went to BC. Ellis can give a brief introduction of himself. Michael Gordon, who was our CTO, and then Doug Whittington, who was our principal web developer. So Ellis, please give a brief introduction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellis, and I'm the Chief Growth Officer at ZipRun. I graduated from Boston Lions School for high school, and then I transitioned over to UMass Amherst, where I also received a degree in finance from the Eisenberg School of Management. And after graduating from college, I worked at State Street as a financial analyst before I left and started working full-time at ZipRun as the executive and co-founder of the company.
Thank you, Ellis. So now we're going to move forward to the mission and vision statement of ZipRun. So essentially, the reason why we created ZipRun, for the very reason why the social equity program was created in Massachusetts, was to help employ, empower, and enlighten our local communities within the Boston area and obviously beyond. We ultimately believe in making cannabis consumption more accessible for everyone. And what I mean by that is we want to shape the delivery and pickup market and make it as efficient and honestly as enjoyable as possible. Moving forward to our vision statement, we honestly aim to be a viable technology company that can facilitate delivery as efficiently as possible. But with our mission statement, we wanted to support people from disproportionate areas within Massachusetts and beyond to prevent the continuation of an inequitable status quo. And that goes beyond ZipRun just providing community support, but providing jobs at a variety of level within the ZipRun organization, and as well as giving back to the community, whether that's scholarship programs, as well as mentorship programs that we can provide as individuals that have graduated from UMass Amherst and went on to work at the corporate level and now are involved in entrepreneurship as both Ellis and I are, as well as the other co-founders on the team. To push forward, we're going to start to talk about the diversity inclusive plan that we put together, and I'll leave Ellis to break that down.
So here at ZipRun, diversity and inclusion is very important to us. And the way we're going to do that is when it comes to hiring drivers or even people at the executive levels of our company, we're continuing to hire people who come from diverse backgrounds, people who've been affected by the war on drugs, who come from disproportionate areas in the state of Massachusetts and disenfranchised communities in the state of Massachusetts. Here at ZipRun, our executive team is built up of 50% is executives come from a diverse background, which is I and Gabe. And we're going to continue this as we continue to expand our company, not only in the state of Massachusetts, but we also have aspirations to go global. So in that case, we're also going to make sure that they're at the high level of the company to make sure that we have people that are from diverse backgrounds. And also we're going to create an ERG, which is an employee research group, which is basically a united network where we're going to push the initiative of keeping diversity and inclusion very important here at ZipRun. So our employees are going to have a safe place or a safe haven in which they can propose policies or ideas of how ZipRun can continue to be a diverse company and continue to impact communities in which we conduct our business. Now, how exactly we are going to measure our goals? Annually, we're going to do reports. We evaluate our diversity policies. We don't only want to hire people from diverse backgrounds, we also want to make sure that we retain these individuals, meaning that they stay with our company. And not only do we want to retain these individuals, we also want to promote them because we want, like I stated before, for our company to be diverse from the bottom up. We want people to come from diverse backgrounds at every single level of ZipRun. So we make sure that we continue to impact people from diverse backgrounds within our company and also throughout communities in the state of Massachusetts and beyond. So we're going to measure these policies and make sure that we're creating plans that actually work and actually impact people instead of just trying to meet a quota. And now I'm going to hand it off to Gabe to speak about the employment plan.
So as far as the employment plan moving forward, as Leslie and Patrick stated, we'll be using our address or our location as a place to store our vehicles, as well as have our command/dispatch location. With that being said, we're looking forward to hiring drivers from the Boston community, as well as operations managers, which we consider to be our drivers leads. With that being said, we're going to start off with about 4 to 6 vehicles in the beginning months, and that will be essentially hiring between most likely 20 drivers from the get-go, because we need 2 drivers in our car to ensure the safety measures that the CCC put in place. With that being said, our drivers go through extensive onboarding processes, one which is required through the CCC and one that we tacked on as Zip Run. So through the CCC, all of our drivers are mandated to go through a training process, which takes about 2 to 4 hours on a yearly basis. And then individually, Zip Run has required our drivers to go through a 35-hour onboarding process, as well as a minimum of 8 hours every year after that. With that being said, what that entails is we require our drivers to complete a walkthrough of vehicles, understanding how the manuals, whether that's the electronic manifest and the driver log. So what those 2 programs allow our drivers to do is to keep track of when they stop at an end consumer's apartment building, as well as tracking their fleet along their trip. So whether they take 1 to 5 stops within a given hour, we're making sure that we track their process throughout that entire instance to ensure that our drivers are safe and the community around them is safe as well. And then moving forward, we're going to get to the community support, where Ellis will expound upon this.
So like we stated earlier, here at Zip Run, empowering our local communities is the foundation of our business. So how we're going to do that is by reducing barriers within the cannabis industry. We want to put in place a policy that requires that 25% of our employment of drivers come from disproportionately impacted areas, meaning communities that were disenfranchised due to the war on drugs and the marijuana prohibition. Also, we're going to provide mentoring, professional, and technical services to people who are interested in getting into the cannabis industry. Because like we stated before, we want to work with other social equity applicants. Zip Run is a technology platform other than a delivery company. So we're going to lend or leverage our technology platform to other social equity applicants in the state of Massachusetts so that they can get fair rates on their business. And also we're going to do this across the country to empower more social equity applicants across America, because this is the vision that we have here at Zip Run. Also, we're going to support nonprofit organizations that have our morals and values as well, because we're not just going to take these profits and just keep them for ourselves. We actually want to spread the wealth and invest into other organizations that are about empowering local communities and making sure that youth in the city of Boston and throughout the state of Massachusetts have more opportunities and resources for success. And we're also going to provide scholarships. We do believe here at Zip Run that education is key. Both I and Gabe both went to college, and we met at college. So if we never had that network or met at college, Zip Run probably wouldn't exist. So education is very important. So we want to provide scholarships to individuals, youth that can have aspirations of going to their dream school or going to their dream college, but don't have the funds to do so. So we want to invest into those children as well.
Thank you, Ellis. Now I'm going to get on to the security plan. So as we spoke about earlier briefly, there are plenty of security metrics that we plan to put in place in each of our vehicles. That includes real-time tracking, as well as surveillance tools. We have integrated with the #1 fleet management industry leader for delivery vehicles, which is GPS Trackit, along with OnFleet. These suite of tools allow us to track our vehicles in real time, so that our drivers, as well as our command center, can essentially watch our vehicles throughout the entire operations. That system includes 4 vehicles and 4 video monitors in the vehicle that provides a 360 view, as well as a dedicated personnel pretty much overviewing the operations from the Zip Run central location. With that being said, before we're able to start operations, the CCC, which is the Cannabis Control Commission, completes inspections on all of our vehicles before we start operations. In due part, we do have 2 drivers in the vehicle at a given time to ensure the safety measures are always heightened. We have automatic locks in the cars, a panic button that comes with our cars that once we upfit them, and then we have slightly tinted windows to ensure that the product that is in the vehicle, which is actually going to be stored in the trunk of the vehicle at all times, to ensure the safety. And then on top of that, none of the vehicles that we have stored at our location in Dorchester will have external markings or symbols on them to indicate that they're cannabis delivery vehicles. So with that being said, all of our vehicles are going to be pretty much incognito when they're on the road. And to ensure that, because we partnered with these software solutions, it basically allows us to take different routes every time when our vehicle drivers are driving to their designated locations. Further along those lines, to prevent any issues from arising, there are also protocols. Like I stated before, we do not have markings or signs on our vehicles. We also do not hold cannabis products at our location. We will not be accepting cash or in-person debit card, to also reduce the amount of time that our vehicle drivers are outside of the car. Also, our drivers are instructed every 30 minutes to touch base with the command center to ensure that they're safe and they're following protocol. And then, like I stated earlier, we did integrate with OnFleet, which is the #1 route optimization API that constantly changes the delivery routes of our drivers, essentially ensuring that our vehicles cannot be tracked, just for the safety of our drivers and for our end consumers. All in all, what we provided here is essentially a direct one-to-one communication with our drivers in our command center to ensure that all of the routes that are taken are efficient and safe for our drivers. And I'll move on to the parking and the transportation. So all of the vehicles will either be owned or leased by ZipRun. It's a little bit different from Uber Eats or DoorDash, where those drivers are contracted. All of the drivers that work for ZipRun are employees of our business. With that being said, all of our vehicles are also registered as commercial vehicles. They will also carry limited liability insurance of $1 million, just to ensure the safety of our drivers and others around. And then lastly, yes, vehicles will be stored overnight at the location in Dorchester, but they will be tightly secured. Obviously, there's currently a fence around the location to ensure that our vehicle location and our actual physical location is short and compact, to make sure that the area around us is as safe as possible. Moving forward, and lastly, what we offer. So our suite of tools includes the online storefront, which you can go on ziprun.com and see, a web admin solution, which allows us to connect with our dispensary partnerships. Essentially, what we use this tool for is for verifying our end consumers. So for our end consumer to be able to place an order on ZipRun, they have to include their ID, as well as a phone number and then their address to sign up for ZipRun. And the backend system that we've built allows us to verify these individuals, as well as confirm that they're able to receive delivery. And then lastly is the driver application that I briefly touched on, which allows us to track our drivers on site as well as during their delivery routes. And then following that, if you do have any questions, you can contact me at gabe@ziprun.com, and I'll leave this slide up here just in case you guys want to reach out. Thank you again for hearing our testimony regarding our cannabis licensee as a courier license. Once again, I want to repeat, we will not be storing product at the location, nor will we be accepting cash or in-person debit transactions. So we're keeping the safety of our drivers and our end consumers as #1 priority. And with that being said, thank you again for having us. And whenever the questions are starting to roll in, please feel free to ask any question. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Gabe. I do just want to address, there's been a couple comments in the chat about access to this meeting. If folks are having issues getting in through the computer link, you can dial in by phone at 408-418-9388 and entering the meeting number. I'll put that in the chat. But I do have a question, Leslie, if you could address this. There was a couple questions in the chat regarding why this meeting is held online now and not in person. And I don't know if
Sure. So when the state of emergency went into effect, obviously everything was moved to online, and the state, the Cannabis Control Commission, which is the state entity that actually regulates all of this, actually issued a formal legal opinion allowing for these meetings, these community meetings, to be held virtually with the approval of the local host community. In this case, the City of Boston is the citing authority, and we received a request and approved that request, allowing for this to be held online for public safety meetings. We have done that for all of our community meetings for both the licensing board and the cannabis board since the state of emergency went into effect.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. And I know for folks, it's not super ideal. I'm still a year in getting used to technology, but until we're given the go-ahead, this is what we'll be facilitating community meetings via. So I want to open it now to comments, questions, and concerns. I know many folks on this call have been to an abutters meeting or a community meeting before, so at this point, you're more than welcome to share your questions, your comments, and concerns about this proposal. I do just want to reiterate that this isn't a discussion about marijuana as an overarching concept. This is just to discuss this proposal at 1170 Morrissey Boulevard. If you'd like to connect later about larger issues concerning marijuana in the city of Boston, I'm happy to connect with you or connect you with the appropriate folks at the Cannabis Board. So with that, I'll open it up to comments and questions. I do just want to run through how that works. If you're joining by phone, you can press *3 and that will indicate that your hand is raised. Again, *3. And I'll be able to unmute you, and you can ask your comment, question, or concern. If you're dialing in from your computer, you can raise your hand. At the bottom of the screen, there's an icon to raise your hand in the chat, and I can unmute you from that section, or you can type in the chat that you'd like to ask a question, and I can unmute you, or you can just put your question in the chat, and I'm happy to just read it for you. So with that, I'll turn it over to the attendees. Again, *3 if you're joining by phone, and then you have a couple different options if you're joining us from the computer. I will go in order of who pops up first, so I'll just keep a tab next to me and run through it. So I won't overlook you. There's usually a couple comments at a time. So I'm gonna go first to Anne. You're unmuted.
Well, hi, thank you. That was very interesting, I have to say. I may have missed something. Now, are they just going to store vehicles there, or are they going to have like a little headquarters and then store vehicles, or I'm not sure.
Just in case folks hadn't gotten on, do you want me just to give a more brief overview of what I presented earlier?
That would be great.
And because I think that will be helpful to you. Again, my name is Leslie Delaney Hawkins. I'm the executive secretary to the Boston Cannabis Board. And I don't usually attend these community meetings, but I wanted to attend because this is the first of its kind in terms of this license type. This is for a courier model of cannabis delivery, which means it is the Uber Eats of cannabis. The location is where they will store their vehicles and where they will dispatch their vehicles from. At no time will there be any cannabis stored there, or will there be any patrons coming there. Everything will be done online. So what will happen is, and I know Zipperon and Gabe, the applicant, can speak for themselves, but I think it's important for it to be coming from the regulatory authority as well. What will happen is if someone is looking to purchase from Zipperon, they will order online. The Zipperon driver will be dispatched from their location, which is the location we're talking about today. They will go to their dispensary and they will deliver to that person's home. Again, no product will ever be stored on site. If at some point in the future, when the wholesale model is adopted at the state and local level, which is in process, that would require a completely new community process. It would be a completely separate process. So I just wanted to make that clear in terms of how this will operate.
So it's just going to be a place to store the vehicles. So are they going to get rid of the building that's there, or the old Sozio building or whatever?
I can answer that. No, we will be using the old Suzio building as our office space. And then outside where there's plenty of parking, we'll be using it as a parking space for our vehicles. So we'll be keeping the building intact as it obviously is a fantastic building and it's as a cornerstone of Dorchester as well. So.
Well, thank you. I wish you luck there. It's going to be a tough place to get in and out of.
100%. The beautiful thing is the highways. We have access, or direct access to the highway, as everyone knows. So that's amazing for us.
Okay, well, thank you. That answered that question for me. I don't know how to unraise my hand though.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. I want to go to Ed Roach. I saw you had a few comments in the chat, so I just want to unmute you if you would like to share your thoughts. Ed, can you hear me? You're unmuted. Maybe this one. Can you hear me now, Ed? Okay. I can circle back to Ed. Again, so just to reiterate, if you'd like to participate, where's Maria? Maria, you are unmuted.
Oh, I was just sent you a question. I didn't really want to talk. I just wanted to know if they intend to advertise on the billboard that's above the building.
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Are there any other comments, questions, concerns? If not, that's okay. Okay, John Lyons, you're unmuted.
Good evening. I have several questions. First one is, why is this community involved at this stage in the process? Is getting community approval, host community, host neighborhood in this case, is that a condition precedent to the issuance of this license?
Pat, if you don't mind, I will jump in there in terms of process. And we know there has been a lot of confusion over what the process is, and there have been a lot of changes. So one of the things we've started doing as the Boston Cannabis Board is hosting information sessions on what the process is. So I'll definitely share the link to that with Pat Fandel, as well as put it in the chat here. The process is that there is a legally required community meeting, and that is what Mr. Fandel is hosting tonight. And as a certified equity applicant, once this meeting is conducted, Mr. Vieira can then request a letter from his city councilor, and that can be support, opposition, or non-opposition. Once that letter is filed with the board, we will then put Mr. Vieira on the next public hearing before the Boston Cannabis Board. But I will note that the ordinance, and again, we can provide you a link to all that, is very specific in what the Boston Cannabis Board considers when citing these locations, and included that is 20% of what the board considers is community feedback.
So you're saying that this is the only public meeting that will be conducted prior to a vote on this license at this location?
No, I'm saying that this is the statutorily required public meeting, and that there will also be a public meeting for the Boston Cannabis Board.
But there'll be no other community meetings.
There is no legal requirement under Massachusetts general law, and it is a due process right to the applicant to go through this process.
Can I ask the applicant a couple of questions? If all you're going to do is delivery,
Yep.
If there's no part B to your business plan, and Leslie did allude to the possibility that a wholesale operation license could be potentially applied for later, why would you insist on a location as prominent and I assume as expensive as this one, if all you needed was a place to park your vehicles and dispatch your vehicles? Because, I mean, we all live in Dorchester. I drive through virtually every neighborhood in the city in the course of a month, and there are plenty of storefronts, underutilized commercial spaces. Why would you choose such an expensive place as this if you didn't have an evolution of your business at that location in mind?
100%. We did have an evolution in mind. Unfortunately, with a lot of Boston commercial properties that are available, the parking is very limited. And with that being said, the parking at this location is not as limited. So it enticed myself and our entire group here at Zip Run moving forward. So that was one of the reasons why we chose this location. This location also provides us with 2 floors of office space, which also allows us to grow as a business while we're also a delivery business at the same time. So on a corporate level for Zip Run, it's great for growth in terms of hiring new people, especially once COVID is over, so that we can have a very inclusive environment at this location, as it provides a good amount of square footage. And then from a square footage to parking our vehicles, not a lot of space within the city of Boston provides us with 20 plus parking spaces for vehicles. So that would be the reason why we chose this location.
And thank you, Gabe, and thank you for your comments, John. I can circle back to if you have follow-up. There's another user with a chat, a question. I just want to make sure that they get their comment in as well. So call-in user, the number is 617-290. You're unmuted.
Patrick.
Oh, hi, Ed.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Gentlemen, have you walked around the neighborhood at all? And do you know who your abutters are? Who lives there?
100%. So both Ellis and I, I would say 2 weeks ago, we walked around the neighborhood and passed out flyers, as well as we sent certified mail as well. But yes, I'm very familiar with the area. I went to St. Anne's, now St. John Paul as well. So I'm very familiar with the area. I basically grew up there. So yes, very familiar with the area. And I know that it can be a fantastic spot for the business that we're vying to be legal and possible at that location. So I believe it would be great, 1, because of the highway access, and 2, I think the community would support what we're doing, as we are looking forward to helping employ people within that area, as well as to push the pendulum forward and saying equity is very important to us, and we realize that we have a huge opportunity to do so. And with that being said, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you realize that there is a special needs home directly abutting your property?
Yes.
You do. And there's also, this is directly in front of where the children's cross over to the church, to the school on Neponset Avenue, and also it's an active elderly site at the Neponset Health Center. And also, if you tried, how many times have you tried to get out of Walnut Street into Neponset Circle? You're taking your life into your own hands at any time. There are no traffic signals from Quincy all the way up to, I believe it's around the Vietnam Memorial on Morrissey Boulevard. It's a disgrace. There's absolutely no traffic signals or speed limits there. And you got a lot of things that you have to consider, but I'm not really sure what kind of a business you're going to be offering. And I'd also suggest that this is probably a change of use. Can you do this project as of right?
And this is Leslie from the Cannabis Board. This is as of right. We've reviewed that with ISD.
I'm sorry?
Yes, this is an
I'm
as
sorry?
of right. This is an as of right project.
What is the occupancy currently?
I'm sure we'll be happy to pull you
What is
that
the
information.
occupancy of the existing store right now? What is the occupancy of the existing store right now?
We'll be happy to get back to you with that information.
Yeah, you should do your homework, please. You should do your homework. Show some respect to this neighborhood and some of the special conditions that exist at this location, please. Okay.
Hi, Ed. I'm just going to jump in. So Leslie's the attorney for the Cannabis Board. So we're happy to circle back on the current use and confirm with ISD. But just to reiterate, Leslie Hawkins is not affiliated with this proposal and is representing the board at this meeting tonight to discuss the licensure. Gabe, I don't know if you have any context to that, but there are a few questions in the chat too that I'd like to circle to.
100%. Yeah. So as of right now, the building is not as use. No one is currently operating within that building. Hence the reason why we saw it as a perfect opportunity to come in there, help provide a job opportunity, as that is a very prominent location. Like I said it earlier, we are not trying to do any harm to the community. We are not storing any cannabis products in the community. We are simply just storing vehicles there. Our drivers are going to be very safe. Like I said before, we were using GPS Track It. GPS Track It allows us to pretty much keep an eye on the speed limit that our drivers take. It warns us and gives us updates of how our drivers are treating the neighborhood, treating the vehicles that they're using. So I assure you that we are doing the best of our ability to make sure that the vehicles used at hands and the drivers that are operating the vehicles are trained up to speed with the regulations of the Cannabis Control Commission, as well as additional training that we provide to ensure that they're going to be as safe as possible and they do not cause harm to the neighborhoods. If anything, we're going to help push the platform forward to pretty much show the neighborhood that we're there to be a part of the community. And please, if you have questions or if you want to talk to me and get in touch personally, I would be happy to do so. I'll also put my number in the chat as well if people are interested in doing the same. And then I'll also link my email down as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Gabe. Before I go on to next questions, I do just want to reiterate my comments at the beginning of this. This is meant to be a respectful environment. I know there are statutory requirements around it that people might not be happy with. I understand that folks might have concerns about marijuana, again, as a concept. But myself and Leslie are here tonight to provide context from the city side of things, and Gabe and Ellis are here to provide context about their application. So this is really the first step as they move forward. So we're just looking to be respectful, please. So I have two questions from Maria in the chat. Where are they picking up the product and how many trips per hour do you anticipate? So Gabe, I don't know if you want to explain that a little bit more.
100%. Yeah. Also, go ahead. Sorry.
And then I guess just will you only enter in and out of Neponset Circle?
Yep, exactly. So to answer that last question, only enter in and out of the Neponset Circle. And then our plan is to partner with the multitude of dispensaries within the Boston area. So that goes from Pure Oasis on Berkshire Roots, other dispensaries that come into the neighborhood. That's the goal on our end. We want to make sure we can facilitate delivery to a multitude of areas. With that being said, we have planned out scheduled delivery rather than on-demand delivery. As you all know, Uber Eats and DoorDash is famous for their on-demand delivery model, but that can become hectic and cause traffic. But what we have done is we've scheduled our delivery so that we can batch our delivery orders. With that being said, so once our delivery drivers leave our Dorchester location, they will not be back for another 2 hours because they'll be delivering products on a 2-hour window basis. So essentially, we want to keep traffic down by installing scheduled delivery rather than offering straight up on-demand delivery, because we realize that can be pretty hectic as an environment. And also keeping that in mind, we do not have product at our store. So once our delivery drivers are out for the day, they're out for the entire day, and they are not planning to come back to that location until the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Gabe. John, I'm coming back to you, and then I will go to Deirdre for her question. So John, you're unmuted again.
I bet. I'll be quick. One question which I didn't have until your last comment about being respectful. When Deirdre says, Leslie rather says that this will probably be the only public meeting because that's all the statute requires, you're pretty much forcing us to raise every possible issue we can right now. So that's what we're doing. This is being presented as a social equity application, and I can see that the participants do qualify under those parameters. But let's get away from viewing Dorchester as the dumping ground for anything that people don't want to put in any other location. I think you could serve this end of Dorchester just as easily from Quincy as you could from the Ponset Circle. There are several food purveyors that are delivering in Port Norfolk currently. I think it's disingenuous to talk about social equity in the neighborhood, that being Port Norfolk, which was cut off by the expressway and the railroad tracks and has been a dumping ground for most of the last 50 years. It took us 30 years to get a hazardous waste site cleaned up in this neighborhood in order to make it into a park, while other neighborhoods got that investment. So I just think that that's why people here might be a little bit touchy. There's a very long history, and people aren't imagining it when they say that this neighborhood has been viewed as a dumping ground. And this is just, you guys may not be guilty of that. The problem is that's the perception. And I think it's fair to ask the question and to ask for an answer and ask you to address that issue. The only other comment I have is to question the structure of your company. This is presented as a social equity application. I did a very limited amount of due diligence because this was kind of a last minute meeting and there are other things going on in the port. But I see there's actually an SEC filing and there's an anticipation of raising capital for this business. So I think the second fair question to ask here is who really are the principals of this business? Who's funding it? And who are we actually dealing with in the long run?
100%. You're exactly right for asking those questions. Per the CCC's regulations, I myself am a social equity member, so I have to hold above 51% of this company for at least the 3 year exclusive period, and I plan to hold this company for the long haul. With that being said, we do have early investors as of right now. We've raised about $300,000, and that was done through a family and friends round, through a couple of our friends that worked at State Street, through an aunt of mine and other corporate workers that we work with throughout our tenure at State Street and EY alike. So please rest assured that we are not trying to lose control of this company, and the regulations that the CCC put in place essentially allows us to keep control of our business. So yes, I myself am on the board of the company. I'm the chairman of the board. Ellis is also on the board, and then our two other co-founders are also on the board as well. So with that being said, in terms of control, we plan to be in control of this operations. That's the reason why we started this business, was for social equity purposes, and we plan to keep it that way. Once again, I appreciate your questions and concerns. And with that being said, I grew up in the neighborhood. I went to St. Anne's up the street before the name was changed. So I do realize your concerns, and I'm from the neighborhood. So I want to make sure when I push the needle forward, I'm going to push the needle forward the right way.
And again, just to jump in here from a licensing standpoint for the Boston Cannabis Board, pursuant to the ordinance, the equity applicant at all times has to maintain 51% or more of the ownership in the business. All beneficial interest holders, whether direct or indirect, are legally required to be disclosed. And any changes in those interest holders is subject to a public hearing and the approval of the board.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie and Gabe. There was a question in the chat. So for operational hours, so what time will drivers go out and what time will they be back?
100%. That also solely depends on the agreement that we come to terms with the HCA, but the times that we're going to propose is 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So with the hope that actually transpires, our drivers will obviously get there at about 9:45. They will leave operations, will leave the headquarters at 10 o'clock, and they most likely will not return to the end of the day, because where they will be picking product up as is not at the current location in Dorchester, but it is actually at other dispensaries throughout the Boston region.
Thank you. John, I'm coming back to you. Sorry. John, you're unmuted again.
Thank you. You could have just read that question, Pat. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here. Gabe, can I just ask you, notwithstanding the statutory requirement that there not be any additional public meetings, would you commit to actually present to the Port Norfolk community
Of course,
what you presented to us tonight prior to seeking a vote for the license by the board?
of course, of course.
I mean, if we have to do it in the parking lot and space off 6 feet in every direction or 3 feet or whatever the current governor's opinion is, as it varies from day to day, a real public meeting, let people see who you are. You can meet the people in this neighborhood, see what they are. And I think, it will be an opportunity to have a reasonable conversation among reasonable people. I too
100%.
graduated St. Anne's School, and in that spirit, I welcome you to come and speak with us.
100%. I appreciate that. Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely open to it. I honestly speaking, I tried to get in contact with you. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but I would love to speak with you, as I want everybody in the community to share the excitement I do about the possibilities that Zipperin can have for the community in all of Massachusetts. So for sure, that's definitely something I'm open to and willing to move forward with.
Thank you. You picked an extremely busy time to try to get me. There are other things happening in my professional practice and in our neighborhood. Next month will be better.
No,
And the other thing I want to let anybody here listening know is that I'll always have conversations with people, but although I may be president of the Civic Association, I never speak for the community without the community itself having the discussion and authorizing me to do so. That's why we never make private deals here. Not that you were trying to do that, but just so you understand my reluctance to have discussions about something as important as this can be. So thank
100%.
you.
Of course. Thank you.
So thank you for that, John. Are there any other comments, questions, concerns that haven't been answered this evening that we can address? And if not, I can just run through next steps, but I'll give it a second just for folks here if they'd like to. Great. Yes. Okay. So I will, so for next steps, as stated, this was the statutorily required community meeting for this cannabis application in front of the Boston Cannabis Board. The next step, so Gabe has conducted outreach through this. He has been connected with the Port Norfolk Civic, and I'm glad that John was on to establish that connection. I will, hold on. Sorry. And then Leslie, I don't know if you want to kind of discuss what happens next from a BCB perspective. But I'll turn it over to Leslie and then we can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pat. And again, thank you everyone for having me. Once we complete this meeting, and again, this is the legally required meeting before appearing before the board, the applicant can and is encouraged to continue all the communications he's already began with the community. The next step will be that Gabe, as the applicant, will request a letter from the city councilor. And once that is submitted, his application will be considered complete and he will be scheduled for a hearing before the Boston Cannabis Board, which again will be open to the public and will be accessed via Zoom. Those hearings are on the second Wednesday of each month at 1 p.m. And the record will be kept open for public comment for the full week leading up to the voting meeting the following week. It's important to note that written testimony is given the exact same amount of weight as spoken testimony at the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. And thank you, Gabe, for joining us. And thank you for all the attendees who joined us this evening. again, if you'd like to follow up after this, feel free to shoot me an email. I know Gabe put his email somewhere in the chat, so I'm happy to connect you to Gabe as well. With that being said, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening and participating. And yeah, if you would like to reach out about this further, feel free to give me an email or a call. But with that, Gabe, I don't know if you have any final comments, but we can call it an evening.
100%. Yeah, I would like to thank everybody for coming out and listening to Ellis and I explaining our community outreach process. Like I said earlier in the call, I'd be more than happy to touch base with anybody during this time, whether it's via email or in person. Of course, during COVID, I do live with my grandfather. He did receive both of his COVID shots, so obviously I'm still hesitant at first to meet people in person, but I'm still very open to it because I do live with my grandfather. But if that's being said and we have to meet in the parking lot, I'd be happy to be 6 feet apart and explain the same process that I did on this call. So obviously super open for it. I'll put my email in the chat again, and please feel free to reach out to me as I'm open to have a conversation. Honestly, even later today, because this is how serious I am about the process. And please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.